Hello, my name's Phil and I'm bringing this old canoe stern motorboat back to life. Her name's Jabiru and this year I believe she turns 90. So a nice old lady, and she'll be lovely when I get her back in the water. So welcome to episode 21. This will contain mostly things like puttying the hull and rounding the corners and maybe getting a first coat of epoxy ready to glass. So that'll be fun. But before we get to that, I've got a couple of things to talk about. I bought this boat from a deceased estate. The owner was Harley France and he lived in Port Stephens, and this boat was a workboat, and you might remember from earlier episodes, this was a workboat for a boat hire business that was at a wharf where the Dalbora Marina is now at Port Stephens, if you know the area at all. So Harley's son Alex is cleaning out the workshop, which is quite a big job, and he found a few boat parts. And he said, I've been in touch with him, he said, look, you can have all this stuff. So there's a box of zinc anodes, some of them new, some of them used. So I might melt those down, get rid of the steel in them, and make them suitable to hang off the side of Jabiru. So there's a bronze battery clamp, for what it's worth. There's a few well-worn chain plates, because Jabiru used to have a mast, so if they ever got a situation where it was downwind where they wanted to go, they used to sail, save the fuel. There's also a ship's bell without a knocker. I might polish that up, make a knocker, put a nice rope handle on it, and we'll have a ship's bell. So if we ever get a foggy day, we'll be able to let everyone know. There's a bronze, whatever that's called. What is that called? Bollard. It's a bronze bollard. A brass cabinet handle, a few copper nails, a few monel and silicon bronze nails, a jar of small roves, a jar of slightly bigger roves, a few assorted copper nails, a few bigger copper nails, and a few even bigger copper nails. So various bronze brackets, half a Haspen staple, and that's about it. That was all he found that was boaty stuff. That is, apart from this old plaque. It's made from some sort of metal and it's painted white and it has printing on it. I'll let you find out what it is later on. I tried cleaning it with Dissolve It citrus cleaner, and it was pretty hard to move. It was sort of baked on grease, looked like it had been under the bench for 30 years, or maybe 20. Anyway, I gave up and I introduced a large bottle of Terps and gave that a splash, and it cleaned up very nicely. Now, Alex has said that I can keep this if I want to use it on the boat and put it on, but it's pretty scrappy, so I think from the point of view of historical value, it might be better off in his hands. So I'm cleaning it off just to show, the artifacts that are being found. So there it is, Jabiru, Port Stephens. It may have been a nice sign once, but not really any longer. Now underneath is another interesting little thing. I was asked by a friend what sort of cabin I was thinking of putting on it, so I put my mind to it and spent at least 10 to 15 seconds drawing this rendition of a cabin. So that's, the first idea. Maybe I'll use the original portholes, but probably it'll look something like that.
You can see Roger at the other side. He's hard at work with a small chisel and a hammer, removing the old linseed oil putty, which is very hard and blunts the plane quickly. On this side, I'm planing off the large bumps. I don't want to do a great job of fairing at this point, as it will all be puttied with epoxy resin combined with phenolic microspheres as a filler. The only fast way to bring this back to a smooth surface is by using a disc sander. No matter how careful I am, this will always present more dips and bumps. There are places where the stringers have been bolted through the planking, and almost every bolt has formed a depression in the planking, and some of these are just too deep to be planed out. Additionally, when the 3 layers of glass go on, there will be overlap joints about every 400 millimeters or so, and these will have to be filled in with filler and probably make existing bumps look unnoticeable. After sanding the filler, I may do a little bit more planing, or maybe I won't. It's great having a forklift on site. However, there's only so far up the driveway that it can go. That drum of resin weighs about 200 kilograms, so from here on, it's all grunt and rollers. It's good to have it in place now, and that's where it'll stay until it's empty. I fitted a spare ball valve into the screw-in lid on the drum so the flow can be controlled. The valve could have been bigger because when it was used the flow was very slow. At least there'll be no uncontrolled flow rates.
And I'll put that back in each time I use it.
For the hardener, I'm using a small watering can, and for both portions, a small digital scale to ensure that I get the correct weights for each batch. That seemed the easiest way of handling this stuff, because I can leave an almost full watering can and just plug the ends, and it'll be ready to use each day. That sound you can hear is a jet going overhead, coming into land at Sydney Airport. They pass over here at about 6,000 feet above ground level, so they sound louder because the sound seems to bounce off the clouds and come down at us. You can see now how this is going to be used in situ. I'll put the container on top of the digital scale, measure out a certain amount, and then add 25% more in hardener to get the weights absolutely correct for each batch. So when I'm finished and I turn off the resin flow, I'll turn that spout upwards, and I now have a small wooden plug that I can put on it so that there'll be no drips. harden it. Now when adding the filler, they say the correct consistency is like peanut butter. But I found there's a fine line between too thick and too thin. Too thin and it sags, too thick and it's hard to apply. This is all new territory for me, as it's been 50 years since I worked with epoxy and everything has changed. And I must say, for the better. This putty is just on the verge of being too hard to spread. It's quite stiff. An earlier attempt had resulted in the putty trying to sag and run downwards, so there was a lot of sanding to bring it back to a smooth enough surface to apply more putty to. So I understand now that when you're puttying holes it can be a lot softer because there's less chance of it sagging. The surface tension seems to be a lot better for holding it in place. Been a lot of talk about to fair or not to fair, so I've decided to fair. Well, I think that's it. That's one side puttied. So now I'll go over to the other side and do the same, which probably take me 2 days as well. So here I go. So I finished puttying everything. So now I'm going to use the disc sander to knock off that putty. I'll use a hand sander to finish off the filleting, both under the gunnel and also at the garboard to deadwood position. I've rounded the corner of my sanding block a little bit. Once the sanding was finished, it became apparent just how many small holes had been missed. So I went over it again with putty and sanded it again. There were still more holes, so there was more puttying and more sanding. Even after all that, I'm sure there are still missed holes there, and I guess I'll find out when I start to do the first coat of epoxy.
It says tomato sauce on this bottle, but it's actually Aquadeer, which is a water-based glue.
In case you didn't realise, one of the final preparations that I had to make before applying the first epoxy coat was to make a roll holder on the table and an extension of that table so the peel ply and the glass can be measured and cut without getting it dirty on the ground. A whole morning was spent making this up. It may be a bit small to see in the picture, but I've already cut biscuit join slots into the ends of these pieces of ply, and the idea is to make the table a little bit wider than the fiberglass. Your standard panel width of a piece of ply is 1200 millimeters, so I'm adding about another 200 to that to make it wide enough to suit the width of the glass and the peel ply. So I'm just going to glue this together and then put the edges on while it's still wet. Clamp for 10 minutes and it'll be firm enough to handle again.
Well, now I've got a rack and a table to measure out glass and peel ply. You've already seen me put this into place with Roger. I've put a ball valve on the bottom of this, and I've got rollers on it so that I can move it around if I need to take this ball valve out again. But all I do is turn that around to there, and then I've got a little set of scales that goes on here. I can measure out very precise amounts of resin, and I've got 20 litres of acetone for cleaning. So I'm using acetone for the final clean out of brushes and rollers and things, and for intermediate cleaning out I can use vinegar, which works quite well. It, before epoxy goes off, vinegar will sort of almost dissolve it, and then it can wash off with water. So it's pretty good. So I've put a little ball valve and a tap on this acetone as well, so I can measure out amounts of that without, having to handle a drum. So it'll stay there now. And that'll be good.
Well, episode 21 was a long one, wasn't it? It contained a lot more than I thought it would in the beginning, and I even promised that I'd probably show you well, I didn't promise, but I said I'd probably show you the first coat of epoxy. Well, I haven't even got to do that. There's just been too much preparation. So if you're still watching it, I've got to commend you on your persistence. You must be really enjoying it. So I'll say thank you for watching if you're watching me say this. So look, I'll see you next time, and there'll definitely be the first coat of epoxy in the next episode. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I look forward to giving you the next one as soon as I can. Thank you.